Thank you all for joining us today for another Editor's Podcast. I'm Dr. Linda Snetselaar, Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And with me today is Francene Steinberg, who is an RD and professor and chair of the Department of Nutrition at the University of California, Davis. She is also the Karine L. Rustisi Endowed Chair in Human Nutrition and Director of the Didactic Program in Human Nutrition. And she'll be talking with us today about a recently funded USDA NIH award to study dietary biomarkers in nutrition. Welcome, Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So please tell me a little bit more about this USDA NIH funded grant, and just give us a few details. This to me, because I'm a researcher and have had a lot of funding through the National Institutes of Health, through NIH, is really major to me. And so would love to hear just a little bit more about this award.
Yes, I'm happy to share some details. It's a really exciting award and I think sort of a momentous time in terms of moving the field of nutrition and dietetics forward. The project is fundamental science, but it has a direct translational sort of outcome and goal. And it's a unique funding collaboration. Typically the NIH and the USDA, they fund things independently through their own funding lines. And this is a funding collaboration. And so together they put forth a request for proposals about developing dietary biomarkers. And the result was that 3 clinical centers were funded as part of a consortium. And so 2 of us are funded by USDA, and those are UC Davis Department of Nutrition and West Coast Metabolomics Center, and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, Washington. So those 2 centers are funded by USDA, whereas a center at Harvard School of Public Health is funded by NIH. But we all really function as one larger consortium along with a coordinating data center to accomplish the goals of the project. And so it's a rather unique situation, and the goals really are to help advance the strategic plan for nutrition research that was developed by NIH and also meets the goals of the USDA.
Yes, I love that partnership, and truly that is unique, and I think brings something very special to this particular type of research. What can you tell me specifically about the goal of your particular research work in this area?
So the goal, I think, for the larger aim of my personal research is that I really do enjoy focusing on foods that are rich in dietary bioactives and their impact on human health and on reducing biomarkers for chronic disease. And then more recently, I've moved into looking at how those contribute to our understanding and our advancement of how individuals respond to different foods and how we may have various categories or phenotypes of individuals responding to foods and dietary bioactives that may contribute ultimately to our better understanding of how to meet the needs of individuals. And so that's a bit about my research goals, but I think they really dovetail very nicely with the larger goals of this consortium project. The larger goals really are to try um, to discover and validate some biomarkers of foods and food intake in order to provide some objective measures that we can use ultimately in assessing individuals' diets and for providing more understanding of the link really between nutrient intake and health and disease. And so that's the larger goal, and the goals and objectives are met by a variety of different approaches within the project. And the project really is trying to identify specific food-related biomarkers that have robust responses and are consistently associated with consumption of that food. And we know in the literature, we already know that a number of foods have various biomarkers, and some of them have been truly validated, such as proline betaine out of a marker of orange juice. But many of these markers that we know are associated with foods have not been fully validated in a diverse population and then applied to some of our larger dietary recommendations. So this project is building on what currently exists in the literature and really moving it forward and using a tool of metabolomics, which really measures hundreds and thousands of different molecules in blood and urine. And these molecules, some of them are directly molecules found in foods. Some are molecules derived from our gut microbiota and are sort of derivatives of those foods, and some are molecules that are results of our own endogenous metabolism. And so really the ultimate end product, if you will, sort of deliverable of this consortium project is to be able to expand the database that exists and build on public databases of curated lists of food-related metabolites, whether they're directly from foods, gut microbiota, or from our own metabolism, so that we have a broad database in which to then use as dietary assessment tools and in other types of work in terms of nutrition and dietetics.
If you think about the work that you're doing, what kind of impact will this have on the future of dietetics, for example? Why is this important eventually?
I think it's very important, but that's a great question because ultimately, science can be fascinating and interesting, but we want to know what's the impact? How can it really advance the field? And we know in nutrition dietetics that nutrition and lifestyle is really one of the biggest drivers of health outcomes. And we have recommendations, the dietary guidelines for Americans, My Plate recommendations. We know that different food groups and specific foods and dietary patterns are linked to health outcomes. But these are broad brush type of recommendations. And we also know that individuals don't always respond the same to foods. There are people that respond very robustly, others that don't respond, and we can see that in some of their clinical biomarkers. But we don't really yet have a real firm handle on identifying who responds and why and in what direction. And so that is a challenge within the field. We also have challenges in the dietetics field in terms of dietary assessment. All of the usual tools, food frequency questionnaires, diet history or diet records, 24-hour recalls, they are memory-based for the most part. They can be subjective, and we're not able to really evaluate person-to-person differences in metabolic responses just from the diet assessment tools and then from clinical measures. And so really, I think the importance of this work is that it will help build objective measures, these dietary biomarkers in blood and urine that we can use objectively to help reinforce and really kind of I guess evaluate the reliability and validity of some of these current food frequency and dietary assessment tools. So it will provide us a tool that we can use as an objective measure to pair up with the tools that we currently have and and really ultimately link this information to be able to apply it to personalized nutritional recommendations in either culinary medicine or personalized nutrition to help build out our current tools and to build new methods to track individuals' response to diet and to make more specific recommendations and personalized recommendations. I think that the definition that's come out of a number of different works on personalized nutrition is being able to use individual specific information founded in evidence-based science to promote dietary behavior change that results in measurable health benefits. And in nutrition and dietetics, we need some of these more objective tools to help us do that. And we can use it in clinical settings or in epidemiologic settings. So I think we're not there yet. The tools are not readily available to everybody in clinical practice or out in research, but this is part of the move to fill that gap and to build that evidence base for providing those objective tools.
Yes, so important to what we do in the future as
Mhm.
dietitians. And on that note, what do you feel eventually this research might do to help clinical dietitians in their practice settings?
This research is using sophisticated metabolomics tools to do this discovery process. And those are not necessarily tools that the clinical practitioner has in their toolbox at their disposal right now. But I think that in the future, we will have some of these tools as things that are readily available. I'm hopeful that right now we have sort of the clinical medical biomarkers that we use. And I hope that in the future there might be something that's easy to use and somewhat cost affordable in clinical practice that we can take an individual's blood or urine and it can be run through a sort of an encompassing panel of of tests to show typically what they have habitually consumed. And right now we just have food records, but if we can look back and say, well, they're consuming a relatively healthy diet, but they're missing this whole area of a type of food group or specific foods. And we know that they respond robustly to these foods or they have a gap in a metabolic need, that we can really make a more specific, targeted recommendation and help them give feedback in terms of their behavior change.
Thank you so much. Beautifully stated and such important research. I hear in many instances as I do research that recurring theme of self-reported information and then how that relates to more objective information. So the work that you will be doing, I think, will be seminal to much of what happens in the field of dietetics over time. So thank you so much
You're
for
very
your work in
welcome.
this area. Congratulations on getting this particular award. And in general, I'm so excited about the work you will be doing and possibly hearing more about it in the future. And thank you again for being a part of the podcast.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. And, this is a very exciting project and it's team science. I've been a spokesperson for this in this podcast, but there's lots of researchers working on this, and it truly is a team effort from many researchers, not just at UC Davis, but at these other institutions. And we will be really excited to share results of this in the future as we go about our work.
Yes, thank you so very much.
You're
And
welcome.
again, congratulations.
Thank you so much.